We'll be starting in about 2 minutes time, please. I request all of you to keep your mobiles on silent or switch them off for the event through the entire duration, please. Thank you. A very good evening to one and all present here. I welcome all of you to this year's summit, The Awakening, My World or The World, conducted by Symphonia Wealth Private Limited. The Symphonia Group, which was started in July 2019, has strived to create a unique platform that offers a wide range of products and services to suit varied investment needs. Known for its client-centered and approachable, known for its client-centered and adaptable approach towards the services offered, Symphonia places emphasis on the importance of understanding the different trends and nature of investments made as the economic climate of the nation is ever evolving. As we proceed, I'm pleased to invite Mr. Sundar to say a few words to kickstart this event that we all look forward to. Thank you.
Good evening, all. Thank you for taking your time to come to this meeting. In fact, we are all meeting after 2 years. In fact, we've been doing last 7-8 years, every year annual meet, and we all know that the last 2 years has put all of us in a lockdown mode. I think finally we are back, and we are back with a bigger and more vibrant event. So we have a lot of topics lined up. I'm sure you would have seen the invite. So there's going to be a lot of takeaways. Hope you will enjoy this evening and a lot of takeaways for you. So let me invite Mr. Amit Basu, who is our CEO, Symphonia Wealth, to be on stage. Thank you, sir.
I would also like to call upon Ms. Poonam, Mr. Uttam, Ms. Sonali, and Ms. Rupa to honor Mr. Amit Basu.
Thank you so much for coming down for this Symphonia Summit 2023. This is the fifth one that we are doing in 23. We started in January. We did one in Feb, one in March, one in April. There's a fifth one in May, and I think we will continue doing such events across all locations where we have a presence. The idea of the event is basically to demystify a few things which looks a little complicated, and obviously a lot of takeaways with industry experts and people who have shown their brilliance in their work careers for last many, many decades. We have three of the industry veterans and experts with us today who have come from Mumbai. And during the course of the evening, they will be giving us thoughts which we can carry back and apply in our daily lives, including financial world. As you see, the topic of the evening today is very different from what you see in an investment program. It says, the awakening, my world or the world. And there's a story, I think many of us would have known the story, and it's good to revise the story. And the story goes like this, that there was a race once between Ganesha and Kartik, the sons of Shiva and Parvati, where they were asked to complete 3 rounds of the world, and one who comes back first will get a prize. So obviously Kartik had a very fast Vahan, which is the peacock. So he started on his peacock and he took 3 rounds of the world and came back. And he said, I won. But in the meanwhile, what Ganesha did, he took 3 rounds of his parents and he sat there and he said, I won because I went around my world, whereas you went around the world. So if you look at the difference between my world and the world, my world is very, very subjective. It's very emotional. Whereas the world is very objective and it's very logical. And there's a tussle between us to understand which world is important. Is it the my world is important, or is it the world is important? And fortunately for us, we have 3 people who know my world, the world, and the intersection of both the worlds so well that they will mesmerize you with their presentation and their ability to walk you through this amazing journey of the my world and the world. But before we hand over and go through that hypnotic journey, I'll just share a few slides with you which are important. So this is the story I spoke about, the Ganesha and the Kartik story. This is my world and this is the world. And tomorrow is the IPL cricket match, I think in Chennai, Delhi versus Chennai. A lot of you and a lot of people around the country are making their teams, right? This is the my world team that you are making for the match and trying to win it. And this is the world. So my world in a cricket parlance is the world in which you will pick up the players whom you think are the best, which batsman, which bowler, pacer or spinner, off spinner or leg spinner, all-rounder. And the world is the pitch report, the weather conditions, what's the humidity of the area, and how will you do? Will you bat first when you win the toss, or will you bowl first when you win the toss? That is the world. So that is my world versus the world in a very simple format for you. Now, we all talk about diversification, asset allocation, and the importance of it. And I think the single most item or single most object which can actually give you the sense of this very, very important phenomenon is your wardrobe. So when you see your wardrobe every day, what do you find? You find that you have got clothes which are not of the same type. You have clothes for the summer season, you have clothes for the winter season, you have clothes for the rainy season, you have formal clothes, you have informal clothes, you have nightwear, you have ethnic wear, and you find that all of them are not used every day. Yet they take a space in your wardrobe. You don't throw them out. Because you know that today what is not in use is going to be in use tomorrow. And hence you keep them in the wardrobe. If I take the same story to a portfolio, what's not working today will work some other day. So don't throw them out of the portfolio. An asset allocation portfolio is supposed to be a portfolio where few things won't work. Everything will not work on the same day. And that is not the reason to change and reshuffle the portfolio. Just like that you don't throw out your winter wear in the month of May, don't throw out the things which are not working today in your portfolio just because their past performance is not looking good. The reason to stay in the portfolio are basically explained by the expert who is handling you, and please ask him those questions, that why it is in the portfolio. Don't just go by the current relevance and current importance of that thing in the portfolio. So that's lesson number one. And in case your portfolio has everything which is working good, then yeah, either you're extremely lucky or you have not done asset allocation. Then probably one day will come, then everything will not work in the portfolio. So please be aware of it. Asset allocation portfolio is neither the best, so that's the consolation that you have to take, but it is neither the worst. So that's the price you get. So neither the best, not the worst, and that is how asset allocation portfolios work. So please remember that. That's rule number one. The second thing that we want to show you, again from the world of cricket, and this is more in terms of the current market trend and the latest data which is coming in. So I randomly went and I picked up few great innings by batsmen in last 20 years, and there's a website which actually showed them. So you can see players from different countries who have played one of the best one-day innings. So you have Kapil Dev, and you have Sanjay Surya, and you have David Gower, and Arvind De Silva, and all of them. Vivian Richards also. And these are the innings which they have played. So in different countries, in different time frames, under different opponents, these innings were played. But there is something which is very, very common here. You want to pick up any innings from here which you want to discuss. All of them have the same kind of message. Any inning that you think should be talked about? Kapil Dev one, okay. So that's home bias. Kapil Dev 175 runs out of 138 balls. It was played against Zimbabwe in 1983, and that helped us reach the finals and then eventually win it. But if you look at the second last column of this slide, it tells you that how many balls were hit out for fours and sixes. So there are 22 balls which gave 100 runs. And then the rest of the 75 runs were made in 116 balls. So if you consider every ball to be an installment of your SIP, every ball cannot be hit for a 4 and a 6. But if you continue the innings for a very long time, you will get those 4s and 6s during the innings. And when you hit those 4s and 6s in your innings, when there's a loose ball, outside off stump, full toss, going down the leg side, those are the loose balls on which you score the max. When are the loose balls to score higher CAGR on SIP installments? When markets are choppy, markets are down, things are not looking good. Installments which are made on those days actually go for a 4 and a 6. But there's a small difference. You have the cricket umpire in your field. When you hit a 4, he signals a 4. But when you're doing an SIP, only time will tell after 5 years that that installment which you did 5 years before actually gone for a 6. So there is no umpire. The time is the umpire, and hence you have to wait for that umpire decision and give it time. So 4s and 6s will come. You have to wait for it. And if you see, this is the only technical slide in the presentation, that whenever the blue line, which is the market, when it goes down, the installments done on that market day, look at the orange line, it's actually up. So bad days installments make higher CAGR, and hence those are the balls on which you hit 4s and 6s. There is a difference between two concepts, and this is important to understand for today's evening. One is the mind and second is the brain. And the mind is actually something which you are very difficult to decide and describe. The brain is still very, I would say, a lot of secrets of brain which is not known to mankind, but still it is a part of the body and it can be distinctly distinguished. So it's a tussle between the brain and the mind. The mind behaves like my world and the brain behaves like the world. We have with us experts who will talk about it. So I'm very happy that we have someone who has understood my world from very close quarters. And my world means you, your emotions, your family, your needs, your requirements. And a lot of work has been done by the mutual fund company which he represents to kind of bring you closer to your my world. And with great pleasure, I'm most happy to invite Mr. Raghav Iyengar from Axis Mutual Fund to take you through this journey of my world. Raghav, over to you.
I would like to invite Dr. Bhatt, Ms. Tripti, and Ms. Rama for felicitating Mr. Raghav Iyengar.
I think they're being safe. They're giving me the prize before I start the presentation, right? Right. I'm not sure if that's going to be good. Yeah, please. Always good to get a... So this is something a friend of mine told me a long time back. So if you want to take, now earlier days I used to take a date. Today I take my wife. And if you want really good service, you tip before the meal, right? You don't tip after the meal, right? So I think Sundar is doing that. Sundar, thank you, please. Yeah. Hands are really loaded. No, keep these gifts. You find the presentation bad, you'll take it back. Thank you. Sorry. You don't mix it up. I'm going to continue wearing this if this is okay. Sundar, can I? Sure. Can you help me with the pointer? What do I do? Just point? Shoot anything? Yeah? Okay. So thank you so much, Symphonia. Thank you, Sundar. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Janak. I think we missed cheering you. I think he's also come all the way from Pune. It's not close to Chennai. And of course, my dear panelists, thank you so much. It really feels nice to do a face-to-face after a long time. I think most of these conversations that we have, I've got so fed up seeing screen that it's very nice to get all of you. Chennai is the only place, and just last week I was in Delhi doing a presentation. Invite time was 6:15. Can you guess, just a wild guess, what time it started? 7:30, yeah, not that bad. Delhi's become better now after Modi. People have become more punctual. Yeah, it was about 7. So Chennai is fantastic. I think you have an event at 5:45, people come at 5:45. Most of the audience is there, so please give yourself a big hand. I know I'm conscious of time, and yes, I can trust Amit especially to come up with something very interesting. So when he sent me this topic 2 weeks back, when he told me this topic, I said, hey, very good, I'm going to talk of the world, right? Because the world is something that I do very well. All of us do, in fact, all of us, Vishal, Sahil, all of us are very expert at it, right? We'll come and give you some fantastic charts, we'll show you valuations, we'll show you some global stuff, we'll talk about US markets and European markets and all that's fashionable that you read in the press. And then Amit, as usual, dropped the bomb on me. He said, no, that's not your topic. Sorry, you got to talk about my world. So this is a little more complicated because like Amit rightly said, there's a mind and there's a brain. So I'm going to try and explain the mind, right? So, yeah, so let's just try and see. Anyone has heard of this name? Can I get a mic? Just a mic. I'd like to walk around if that's okay. Just give me a mic, normal mic. It's okay. No, that's fine. I'm happy to. Sorry. Yep. Anyway, my wife says I'm very loud, so I hope I don't need to use this much. But anybody has heard of this lady? Just a guess, yeah. She created quite a sensation long time back. Actually, she by her, in terms of her, she doesn't have a great CV. So she had a fairly pained childhood. She lost her parents. She was single, obviously, at a very young age. So she had no other place to go, but she got a job as a stenographer. If you remember, stenographers, those are the days before the iPhone, you can dictate and it'll type out. Those days you actually had to talk to somebody and then they will write down and then they'll type the letter and they'll give it back to you. I'm seeing some of the senior people in the audience nod their head. I yet do that, sir, sorry. I'm a little old-fashioned. But what this lady did was very interesting. She used to work for a company, Abbott Labs. I'm sure you heard of Abbott Labs. They made a very large acquisition, Chennai-based company recently. And every year or every month, whatever savings she had, she used to put about, and buy just maybe 2, 3, 4 shares every time she got an opportunity, right? There was no science to it. She used to work in that company. She liked the people. She didn't know anything about what Abbott Labs did. Obviously, she knew they manufacture pharmaceuticals, but she had no clue about all the patents and all the great stuff they're doing. She just said, hey, this is a nice company, I work here. Whatever savings I had, she managed to put it, right? Any idea why she got famous? Because she worked for about 40 years, right? Oh, you want me to go back up? Sorry, he's saying no. Something wrong. He's the boss. Can you hear me now, boss? Okay. No, I'm talking to the videographer. He's saying something to him, so I don't know. So like, you can get that story. She worked for a long period of time. As I said, she became an orphan at a very early age. She had to start working to support herself. A little frugal, obviously. People come from a slightly low income background. They tend to not spend much, right? Unlike my children today who tend to blow up as much money as I make. But, but that's okay. And after about 40 years of working, when she passed away, she made a $7 million donation, right? How many people in this room, Amit, would be $7 million? That translates to about 60 crores, give or take where the rupee is today, right? So what we're trying to say here is that a very, very ordinary person doing an ordinary job, just a little bit of regular savings, right? And you see what they did. This created a big sensation in the US because people were so shocked that how could such a person without any qualifications, no great title, she was not some CBO or something like, president or CEO like Vishal or somebody like that, make so much money. They created a big furor in the newspaper, right? And US is anyway full of lovely news, so they kept flashing it. Few weeks later, this guy came in. Has anybody heard of him? I'm sorry, the people at the back. Mahesh, can you see this? Anyone heard of him? These are old stories, so I'm sorry. It's okay if you guys don't know it. This is behavioral finance, in some sense. So, to give you a sense, this guy was Ivy League. He graduated from the Chicago school, Booth School, which is, I think, even today, Vishal, your daughter studies abroad, so I'm guessing she would be top 5 in the world, maybe, Chicago Booth. Raghuram Rajan, by the way, teaches here. Now, that's the current claim to fame. He's one of the professors there. After that, obviously, he went and joined an investment bank. In those days, Merrill Lynch was one of the biggest investment banks in the world, preeminent in the US. Even today, they're there, but they're not known as Merrill Lynch anymore. They're known as Bank of America. They blew up in the 2008 crisis, right? And he was the youngest managing director. He made a fortune. Sorry, a lot of obviously. So, any guesses why you think he became famous?
Because he blew it all up.
Yep. He declared bankruptcy, personal bankruptcy. Right? So what did he do? I mean, a guy who's making so much money, so well qualified, youngest managing director at 40, right? All the right contacts, all the right education. But what did he do? What is the fundamental difference between both of them? She saved little bit. This guy made multi-million dollars and he declared personal bankruptcy. In fact, in his statement, he said, I have nothing in my hand except my wife's jewelry. Which I guess is why he declared bankruptcy, because if he had tried to sell it, he would not have existed, right? Chennai, people try and sell their wife's jewelry, I don't think they'll live very long. That's at least what my wife has told me. So I said, boss, you do whatever shit you want in your life, you invest in mutual funds, you do whatever thing, but if you touch my jewelry, boss, you will not wake up the next morning, that's all. So he obviously had to declare bankruptcy. So he was like, but this created a furor in the newspaper. And just 3 weeks earlier or 4 weeks earlier was the story about the lady over there, right? So I think it's something worth reflecting on, that I think somebody who's frugal, so you don't need a great education, you don't need to be in markets, you don't need to be some super hotshot MD, you can be a very, very ordinary person from a very ordinary background, doing a very ordinary job and yet make a hell of a lot of money for you. That's what I wanted to start with, right? So I think importantly, I think this is a very important line. I think this is critical. So investing is not about the study of money. Yes, we'll complicate it. We'll give you all kinds of formulas. We'll give you Excel sheets. We'll give you returns. We'll give you portfolios. But it's more importantly, it is how you behave with your money. And the story of Grace and Richard is very clearly that, it is not about what you know about money management. It is actually what you do with the money that you make, right? So I think just keep this somewhere in the back of your mind. We'll move ahead a little bit, right? What's behavior? I mean, behavior is what we do every day. I mean, like I said in the beginning of the presentation, Chennai people's behavior is that if they get an invite at 6, they come at 6. Delhi behavior is if you come at 6, they come at 7. That's the behavior. All right, and I have a couple of interesting stories there. I mean, a cousin of mine got married to a North Indian, and in the invite time was 7:15. So as usual, the Chennai gang landed up at 7:15, and there was nobody in the hall. In fact, they were putting up flowers and decorating the stage and all. So then finally somebody called up and said, boss, my cousin was a boy, so he said, ladke wale aa gaye, the boys have come. So then someone scrambled here, there, they found some cousin, lala, mama, something. They came, there was no dinner, nothing was done. And it also unfortunately was that my cousin's father was an army guy. So he was not even 7:15, he was 7. Right, so army people have this habit of going 15 minutes early. And it was actually quite amazing because by the time we finished and did everything, it was about 9 o'clock. And by the time, at 9 o'clock, actually crowd started coming in. And I'm told the party went on till 2. That's Delhi for you. But that's behavior. That's what you do, right? It's an action. It is not in your mind. I mean, if Chennai people come on time, it is an action. You come on time, you don't crib about traffic, you don't crib about metro, you don't crib about stuff. 6 o'clock Kupta, 6 o'clock Varangal. That's all, right? Unfortunately, Delhi has a slightly different story. I have nothing against Delhi. It's just that when you do Delhi, just don't make the mistake I made. Please, if you're getting married or you have some North Indian relatives, please check with them exactly when will you come. I tried my best to tell my uncle that please don't go before 8:30 because, Vishal and I have done a lot of events in Delhi, so we know exactly how that crowd behaves. But my uncle being an army guy, Vishal, he said, get lost. You don't know stuff. So anyway, it was an experience for him. It's also a decision. I mean, it's exactly like I said, that if there is an invite at 6 o'clock, it's a decision you come at 6 o'clock. I mean, in Delhi, if you come at 7 o'clock, the decision is then you don't have to go at 7. You can go at 8:30. It's okay. It's at this thing, right? Same thing happens in your, sorry, this is all, can you see this? I mean, this is what you see, right? This is your iceberg. This is your behavior. This is what you see on a daily basis. I'm sorry, can you see this at the back? I hope this is clear. I've got some stuff here. But this is what Amit and I was talking about. This is the mind. This is how you take that decision. It is your feelings, it is your opinions, it's your thoughts, it's your values, it's your emotions. And these don't come out. These don't come out. What comes out is the top, right? Market fell 1,000 points today. The behavior, fortunately, thanks to people like Sundar, now people call me and say, should we invest? When I started my career 20 years back, I think I had massive. So today it's slightly contra. So when the market falls, I get more money. When the market actually goes up, I get less money. So it's that way it's great. But that behavior is influenced by this. So somebody has given you an opinion, somebody has changed your mind, somebody has put some value, somebody has put some emotion, right? When COVID happened, right, I think everybody got into a bit of a stage of shock. I mean, people didn't know what to do. I mean, I know people in Delhi, for example, in the second round of COVID who drove 450 kilometers to get a cylinder of oxygen. And unfortunately, they didn't close the damn tank properly. Nobody told them what to do. So by the time they came back to the 400 kilometers, there was only a steel container. There was no damn oxygen in the container. So that's when you get fear, when you get panic, or the vice versa happens, right? When you, like what we are feeling today. So I've been flying around the country for the last 6-8 months, especially. It's just joy of, flying again, if I may put it, because we got stuck so long for about 2 years doing nothing. And I think that feeling is there everywhere. Everyone is flying. So everyone is flying because index is at 60,000. So everybody is saying, chalo, chalo, let's return some money, let's just spend it. That's what happens when you get, we always take emotions with fear, but there's a lot of happiness also. I think last year, I don't know if you're aware, but there were, I think, something like 400,000 weddings in Delhi or in the north. And I think that turned out to be some 10, 15 not billion dollar industry. In fact, there was a research report around it. Maybe Sahil will tell you about it when he comes, that out of nowhere, 100,000 crore industry sprouted because of the fact that people are so happy, right? So I think, what do you want? I mean, fundamentally, when you invest, what is it that you're looking at? Largely these 4 things. I think you want to obviously create wealth. You're investing money in equities. It's a 14, 15, 16% long-term compounding asset. You were saying, yeah, I want to create wealth. You want a little retirement. People like me who are getting toward the end of their career want to have a little bit of money so that we can sit. Sir is here. Sir is just retired from L&T, right, sir? So I think obviously he wants a happy retirement. I'm hoping he is very happy because he's sitting right here and smiling at me. So that's fine. You want to have a lot of financial freedom because I think that's the new kid mantra today, right? If I ask my son, who's about 24, that what he wants to do, he says, I want to retire at the age of 40. So I was asking him, what the hell will you do at 40? Because there's a very good chance that you will live to 90, given that. So he says, no, I want to have the freedom to make a good financial decision. I don't want to have a stress in my mind at that time. I want to be free. I don't want to work for somebody. I don't want to be constrained to a job, to a city, to blah, blah, blah. I want to just have enough money so that I'm fine. And lastly, of course, more importantly, you need to have money to have peace of mind, right? Today, if you want to sleep well, and I think that is what largely investors want. What do they do? Why do they do this? They don't create wealth. Why is that? If the Indian stock markets have given 15% return, 16% return in the last 20 odd years, that means roughly your money has grown about 20, 25 times, right? I don't know, Amit and Sahil are the experts, they'll tell you. But yeah, if everybody's seen that, the best investment that I have is the investment that I actually forgot about. What do we do to, there is an investor return and there is a, let's say, a market return. And the gap is actually what we call the behavior gap. And that gap is huge, not only in India, it's all over the world. But why does that happen? Can you see this football guy? Can you see him at the back? You know what he's doing, right? This is a goalkeeper. He's basically standing there. It's a great match. Let's visualize the World Cup. It went into a penalty shootout, right? And then you know who won. So I'm not going to get into history. Argentina did that. But just imagine you're this goalkeeper, right? This is the statistical probability of what will happen. That if he goes left, 30% of the time he'll save the penalty. If he goes right, he'll save 30%. If he goes left, it's about 39%. And then if he does nothing, it's about 30%. So what do you think this this goalkeeper should do? Very difficult. It's 1 in 3, 1 in 2. The crowd behind, now just think of ideally what he should be doing is just hanging around here, not doing anything actually. Because there's there's a pretty good chance that he has to do nothing. He has to stand, and there's a 30% chance that he will save the goal, right? But just can you imagine the stadium atmosphere? It's huge crowd, there is huge pressure, there is a lot of, there are possibly thousands of TV cameras, maybe millions of fans cheering you. So what does he do? He tries to take a left-right decision. Now, why am I telling you this? Because let's say when things are bad, 2020, for example, you open the news, you get fatalities, body counts, and the Times of India had a brilliant thing on top which says number of COVID patients in the world, number of COVID patients in India, number of deaths, right? So you open the day with that, and there's so much noise. I mean, forget about it. Many people actually stopped reading the newspaper because of that, and I tell some of my friends in the Times of India that that was a stupid thing to do, right? But that sells, unfortunately. You look at your own, you open the TV today, you have so much of noise, right? I mean, Monday morning, just to give you an example, you remember the Karnataka elections last week. Election results came out on Saturday. All the pundits said that there's a very good chance of a hung assembly and all that, right? You remember, it's very recent, right? What happened? I think obviously everyone knows Congress won complete. I think they also are quite zapped as to how they won, but that's okay. They won, and they won by a margin. So what happened in the, so Sunday, if you open the, if you look at any WhatsApp or you look at any news channel or you look at any Money Control or any of these lovely articles that are there, they say mostly the market will collapse, right? Logical. BJP got smashed. People are scared. Will this repeat itself in 2024? Will all this Atmanirbhar stuff will stop? A lot of things are there. Investors like, obviously, continuity, right? So the last thing they want is uncertainty. But investors are not professional. They are also like this goalkeeper. They wanted to do something. What happened ultimately is that the reverse happened. The market actually went up on Monday morning. It's a different thing that it fell on Tuesday morning, but it went up on Monday morning. So don't be the goalkeeper. I mean, don't be the left-right stuff. And that's what we tend to do here, right? 32, most of the times, because of the pressure of the crowd, the goalkeeper is diving to the right 49%, he's diving to the left 45%. He's not sitting here, he's standing there 6% of the time. Does this make sense to you? Ideally, he should just be sitting there, right? Because he's got a good chance of 30-30, but he's diving. Why is he diving? Why is he doing this? Because of that noise, that pressure, that emotion, that fear, that if I just stand there and if the ball goes to the right, people will think I'm an idiot. I didn't do anything. So he does some stupidity, and in most of the times he loses the penalty. The penalty shootout is in some sense the dead shootout, right? What happens here? I think the same thing we tend to do, right? Ideal behavior is you sell high, buy low. It's very practical, right? I think if you ask me. But most investors, what do? They come here at 2020, right? Everybody jumps into pharma in 2020. 2020 was the highest inflow in pharma funds. And what happened? Obviously, that was the top. It went down. They do it again. 2021, everyone thought IT was the next big thing. Everybody's going to work from home. Life has changed. Nothing has happened. We are all here, right? 150 people. We could have done this, Amit, by a nice Zoom call, right? May have saved these people time to come here, but we are all here. So everyone thought IT is like the greatest thing. Bought IT here. Today, people are selling out of IT. Why? Because it's minus 20%. And then they repeat this. And they keep repeating it again and again and again. Why? Because of the goalkeeper. Remember the goalkeeper example. Remember my iceberg thing. You have to take some action, right? You feel that something is happening. I have to take action. I have to take action. Your mind is telling you maybe not to take that action, but your feelings, your brain is maybe logical. Your mind has got all its biases, all the news flow, all the noise, and it's telling you do something, do something, do something, and then that's what you do. And then you repeat it again and again. And then one fine day when Sundar comes and gives you his portfolio, he will say mutual fund is a shit instrument, equities are bad, they're horrible instruments, I'm going back to FDs. I've lost so many investors because of that, because they all come in there and they get out. And unfortunately, that's because humans are very emotional. They are not practical. And you can put this into a computer and say, computer, run my business. There's a very good chance that the computer will also screw up, because the computer is made by whom? It's made by all of us. So in some sense, it will take those biases. Maybe 20, 30 years later, maybe there'll be a robot who will run our investments. Maybe. But will we allow the robot to run it? I don't think so. Because you need someone to actually hold your hand at that time, right? And this is what I was trying to say. So this is actually the investment returns. I don't have the exact percentage here, but there's a very big gap. In India, it's almost like, we did a survey in Axis Mutual Fund. That gap is almost 6%. It's almost 40% of the total return. Because people come here and get out here. They don't stay the course, right? So how do you sort of protect yourself against this, right? And this is, unfortunately, this is just getting bigger and bigger, this balloon. What you actually need is this small little dot. You don't need all this. You don't need this noise, you don't need this information. What you need is here. Because what you are investing for is peace of mind. You're investing for retirement, you're investing for children's education, you're investing for a second career, whatever you're investing for. What you need, that information is only here. What you get is all this whole circle, right? And this is a part of that is information which frankly may be useful to you, but most of it is here, which is basically noise. So if you go back and remember my goalkeeper example, you are the goalkeeper here. You have to be focused. You have to actually just focus on that ball. What you do is you focus on everything else. You focus on the noise. You focus on the stadium. You focus on the cameras. You focus on that pressure. And that builds a lot of anticipation, a lot of expectation that you have to do something, right? Something has to be done. So you have to figure out how to break out of this noise, right? So how do you change this? I think this is very important. So this is you. Lots of mistakes on this side, right? This is a door, it's swinging here. Ideally, you need this door has to be opened or closed by somebody like a financial partner. I call them a financial coach, right? I think it's very, very important because this is in some sense the guy who's going to actually allow the right things to reach you or not reach you, right? So if you can't do it yourself, I think that's very critical, and most of us can't. I can't, for example. Because we all are emotional beings, you need someone to hold your hand, you need someone to tell you, don't do certain things at points of time. Everybody tells you what to do. Most people don't tell you what not to do. So if you are able to understand what not to do, and that's very difficult, right? Because we are cushioned right from the time we are babies, because we are told, hey, don't touch that electricity point, don't lean out of the window. So your life is a series of don'ts. So when you have the power to do something, you do it. And most of the times you do it in the wrong sense. So you need someone to actually correct you there, right? So what does your MFT do? I mean, in this case, obviously, it's Sundar, right? What does he do? He helps you identify your goals. This is the easy part. It's quite common. If I take a poll around the room, 90% of you will say, I want to retire safely. I want to have a good future. I want to save for emergencies. I want to plan for my kids' education and stuff like that. It's very, very easy, right? This is the second part is also very easy. I think designs an investment plan, all this stuff you can do. In fact, you can do it yourself. There are enough of websites which allow you to do this. But I think the most important thing that your MFT does is to make sure that allows you to stay focused in spite of the noise. So when you are in the mood to do an action, imagine if the goalkeeper had a coach, and after every shoot or just before the shoot, the guy keeps telling him, don't go right, don't go left, just stay where you are, just stay focused. There's a 30% chance that the ball will come straight at you, right? Because nobody can figure out which part of the goal the ball is going to get into. So sometimes doing nothing is actually doing a lot, right? So how do you do it? You need someone who can get this for you. So this is the most important part of what you do it, right? So people tell me that, hey, Raghav, you are now of course it's compliance, but for a long period of time, I think I bought my last stock, I think almost 10 years back. So many of you, in private must be coming and tell me, hey, you're damn lucky, boss. You work for one of India's largest mutual funds. You have so much of equity assets under management. You must know exactly what to buy. And I said, see, the fun is not in buying. The fun is knowing when to cut your loss and sell. So actually I'm paying a mutual fund manager to actually sell down a bad stock, which I cannot do. So whenever I feel I'm a great investor, I go and open my cupboard. 90s, I think when I started life, late 90s, it was the IPO era in those days, and I bought a lot of stuff. A lot of that stuff is just paper today. I don't think it will even give me raddi value today. Raddi in Bombay means junk. I'll get probably 12 rupees a kilo. Sorry, yes, boss, 5 minutes, I'll be done. Yeah, thank you. But today, that's my spotlight to mistake, right? The day I feel that, hey, I'm a real hero, I just look at those mistakes and I say avoid, right? And this is what MFT does for you, right, today. So we spoke in the bus. Amit started off by talking about this. Anything unique you can see in this photo? My last 3 slides, Sundar, don't worry. Anything unique? It's obviously, for us in the Hinduism plethora, it is the first family of the universe, correct? But anything apart from that? Anything very different? So can you figure out this? I think in some sense this slide is your asset allocation slide. Can you tell us how this is asset allocation? Huh? So what is asset allocation? You need to have a mix of assets which perform well at different points of time, right? So typically people say when you buy equity and you buy debt, when equity does badly, like let's say last year was, or 2021 was not a great year for equity, but 21-22 was okay. Or last year was a great year for gold, 22-23. So gold, debt, equity, real estate, all that is there. So how is that working here? And what does an MFD do here for you? So can you figure this out? There is Lord Shiva's snake. There is Ganesha's rat or mouse. Don't snakes eat mouse? They do, right? So they are part of that picture. You have the peacock here, which is Lord Kartikeya Muruga's vehicle. And then of course you have, of course, the tiger somewhere here. I'm not able to figure out where he is, but there's a tiger. And of course there is Nandi. So what does a tiger eat? It typically eats the bull, right? So this is your asset allocation. You need all those instruments. And how are you going to get it? I mean, one way to do it is to go and say, I'll buy 20% of everything. You can't do it, my opinion. You need someone to coach you and say, hey, at your level of financial goals, you need to have X amount in debt, X amount in equity, X amount in gold. And many people just think that debt means bank FD. It's not. Actually, mutual funds offer very, very good options for debt instruments, right? Even with the taxation benefits going away, there are a whole host of benefits that are there. But I'm not going to talk to you about that. But this is broadly the asset allocation slide. And the person who puts it together, ultimately, the reason they're all together is the person in the middle. This gentleman here. I won't call him gentle. I think many of you will get upset with me, but this lot here is the reason that whole picture is together. So I'm not saying make your MFD your God. I don't think we deserve that status. None of us do. But just listen over there, right? So what is your MF? Does anyone, I'm sorry, can this picture be seen? Right? You remember this picture? This is the whole Sita abduction photo, right? So what happened here? I think, why did Sita go and what was the cause of that? She saw this golden deer. If you remember, that was Ravan's uncle, Marich. He converted himself into a deer. Phenomenal movement, right? Very adaptable person. And then he made Ram and Lakshman to go behind that, right? And then you had, obviously, this happening. So what does your MFD do? He prevents you from the noise, the distraction. I didn't think he allows you to get into crypto and stuff. Anybody bought crypto here? Nobody's honest. Okay. Oh, one person. Sir, please meet me after this presentation. I want to shake your hand. Delhi people said, are you mad? Crypto, we've never heard of it. And I'm sure 20% of the audience had it. So he doesn't allow you to do that. And more importantly, he builds a Lakshman Rekha around your goals, right? He says, hey, don't step out of this. Because if you step out of this, there's a very good chance that you will get taken away and your goals won't come in, right? This is my favorite slide. I think this is the one, it's very complicated, but this is the eighth wonder of the world, right? This is the compounding interest formula. This is A, P. P is the amount of money you invest. And of course, R is the return. T is time divided by 100. What most of us do in the world is actually focus to some extent here, and we focus a lot on here, right? Markets went up 10%, crypto went up 100%, gold went up 50%. Frankly, this is not the baby here. You have to actually look at this one. And this is what you have to basically, your MFD does two things for you. I think he makes sure that you stay focused on the T, which actually is the one that makes you money, right? And more importantly, he makes you focused on the P, because how much of money to invest in a particular asset class? If you remember my Shiva, Parvati, Ganesh, Kartika photo, that's the P, how much money to put there. And then more importantly, holds your hand and makes sure that don't invest in a lot of things. So if you, all of us have heard of Albert Einstein, right? So Albert Einstein is the one who coined this saying that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, right? Those who understand it, earn it. Unfortunately, those who don't understand, pay it, right? So let's be in the group which understands it. Thanks to people like Sundar. Again, Amit, Sundar, thank you so much. Pleasure talking to you. And I'm sure we're going to have a nice set of Q&As after this. Thank you. Apologies, I'm 3 minutes late. Yep. Can I keep this or should I give it back? Was the presentation okay? It was okay? Okay. Thank you. I'll hold this.
Thanks, Raghav. Quite interesting. And I think the lesson which is very important for us to take up from this presentation was you heard the story of that old lady and the vice president of Merrill Lynch. And there's a very, very deep and profound message there. if you want to be successful investor, it is not important for you to understand investing. It is probably the only profession in the world where you can stand up besides an expert and make money without knowing the subject. You take any other profession. You want to become a doctor, you have to compete with a doctor, you have to become a doctor. Otherwise, he will be better than you. If you want to compete with a chartered accountant, you have to be a CA to compete with him. You want to become an investor without knowing investing and compete with the knowledgeable ones, you have mutual funds at your disposal. No other profession you can compete with the proficient and the expert ones without knowing the subject. This is the only one, and for that you have hired mutual funds and distributors both. So we are at your service. The next session that we're going to talk about, I think I picked up this during the day, and I found there's a very unique thing that a lot of people do in South India, which they called kolam. We call it rangoli in North, we call it kolam here. Every house makes a kolam or can make a kolam, but all the houses have the same kolam? No. These are radially symmetrical diagrams which you make. You have to join dots in a way, and every time you join the dots in a different way, they look different, but they all look beautiful. So there is no perfect way of making a column, and that is exactly, there is no perfect way of making a portfolio. It is all as per the personal objectives and needs and desires of the world, of the individual, keeping in mind the world at the background. And let me give you one small story, and then I'll invite the next speaker here. So there's a book or a series called The Last Lecture. It's written by a guy called Randy Pausch, and what he told is very interesting. He said when he was a kid, he went to learn football, and he went to the coach and said, I want to learn football, okay, kal aa jana. So he went next day. And he went next day, there were 10-15 boys were standing in the queue for trying to learn the tricks of football, and somebody notices that there is no football which is around. So one boy mustered up the courage and went to the coach and said, sir, we are going to learn about football, but there is no football. So how do we learn about it? How do we learn how to play football without the football? And he said that, at any point of time, how many people touch a football on the ground in a match? He said, 1. So we'll learn what the other 10 have to do when the football is not with you. Okay. So I think with that, I have with me Sahil Kapoor from DSP, who knows what to do when the football is not with you. Okay. How you have to behave when you see the world around you, but you are not in your driving seat. And how important it is for you to know this art of playing the game without the football with you. So Sahil, over to you, and please give him a big round of applause.
Yeah, I'll use it. Thank you. Hi, good evening, everybody. So I think it was a wonderful presentation by Mr. Iyengar, and I will try to probably touch upon a few topics which I think are probably going to sound a little more different than my world. I think it's probably the same stick at my world at one end and the world at the other end. So it's not very different than how we perceive it to be. But my task is a little tough in terms of how we perceive the world. I think we perceive the world with a lot of noise. We think that the moment we expose ourselves to information, we are going to make mistakes. And I'm usually reminded of one very important aspect, which is, all of us know, fasting. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of nutrition. Maybe in my slides I have one slide which talks about it. But I think this thought came up just now when I was sitting. And I think when we want to do something new or achieve something new, the easiest thing to do is to give up, right? And the best and the easiest way to give up is to give up food, because it is very easy to sensitize. You can just give it up, right? or at least try to give it up. But I think the trick lies in being under control, knowing fully well what you want to achieve. And by what I mean by that is, there is a very beautiful doha by Kabir, where he says that anybody can become a monk or a sadhu living in a jungle. It's very easy because there is no distraction. But as soon as you become a householder, that is where you become a real sadhu, because you have all the noise coming at you. And believe me that you can become Miss Groner, which Mr. Iyengar showed right now, but it is very, very tough, right? To become Miss Groner, to have that kind of poise and understanding, or possibly, not caring about what's happening in the world and still going on with your investment. And that is why there is one Miss Groner over a 30 or 40-year period and not many, right? Maybe there are a lot more we don't know about, but it's not easy out there. What I believe is that the world is interconnected, right? My world, which is our own understanding, is not different from the world. It's a subset of the world, and you can't do away with it. We can close our eyes to noise, but we can't remove it, right? So it's better to understand it and then probably utilize it to our advantage. So I will try and look at two aspects here. First is I will give you my understanding of the world, and then we will look at the world. We'll look at some data from real life, and we'll try to make sense of what's happening globally right now, particularly in India. We'll look at some slides, right? So this is the slide which I thought I will speak about, which is hello. Yeah, now it's working. Hello. Yeah, thank you. So if you look at this pyramid, this is very intuitive, and you have to pay maybe 10 seconds of attention to understand it. This is a PMR which is at the bottom, which is called BMR, basic metabolic rate. So at each day we consume a number of calories, right? We eat food, and usually one simple day, every day, most of us consume between 2,500 to 3,000 calories, depending on our eating habits, and we expend similar amount of energy, right? Let's say that we spend about 2,500 calories every day by doing what we do, and the biggest part of our expenditure is called BMR, or basal metabolic rate. You would have heard about it. This is something, it's like switching on the lights to keep the factory on, right? It happens on its own. So your heart is pumping and your body is functioning, and it will take up 70% of all your daily energy just by being alive, okay? The rest 30% comes from these three segments. One is called TEF, the thermic effect of food. The food that we eat requires energy to be digested, which is again another 15% or so, right? And there is a very small part called EAT, which is exercise activity thermogenesis, which means going to the gym, running, or doing any such exercise, right? And then there is something called as NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I'm sure all of you or most of you would have heard about BMR, maybe going to the gym, which is EAT, talking about what to eat and how do you digest food, what is right and what is wrong. But very few of us focus on this part, which is called NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This part is what I call the behavior. It is like getting up from here and going to the lift, taking the stairs, not the elevator. It is how you live your life. This is the habit. And this part of the pyramid has a larger impact on how fit we will be over time than any of the other parts, because the other parts are very tough to achieve, right? And when you talk about investing, it's not very different. Investing is also very similar. What we do is we focus a lot more on what is very tangible, which is going to the gym. How do we invest? Which instruments do we carry? But we don't pay a lot of attention to our own behavior, right? And the idea is, in some sense, if you look at this behavior, which I think Mr. Iyengar spoke about beautifully, this behavior is very personal oriented, right? It's something that you do for your own. But the point is that this behavior can be enhanced or changed with a conducive environment, right? So if the environment is conducive, there is a higher chance of you doing better versus in a bad environment, right? And of course, there are people who can, be monk-like and do as well in both the environments. But I think it will be much better if you were to exist in a better and more conducive environment and then function. That means as an investor, can you create better environment for yourself so that you take better decisions? So I will show you that it is possible to look at the world and data through a lens which will give you more confidence to stay in the game, to stay alive and possibly act like Ms. Groner and get the best out of the investing. There is a parable, so I don't know, there is an author called Amitabh Ghosh who's written a book called The Nutmeg's Curse, which is about forests in Indonesia. So nutmeg is a tree which holds together the forest in Indonesia, in the Banda Island. And there is a very beautiful story where this botanist guy goes to a Indonesian tropical forest. And there at the forest, he wants to understand the flora and fauna of how the leaves are and what species live there. So he takes this young boy with him. And this young local boy, the jungle boy, he understands the forest very well. So when they go into the forest, the boy is able to tell the botanist about each and every species in the jungle. He can recount the names, and the botanist is surprised. He says that you are a young boy, your knowledge is, superlative, and you are a genius. But this young boy says that it's true that I know the name of all the plants and leaves, but I don't know their song, right? What does that mean? So it's a metaphor. What he's saying that I know how these plants are and what are their names, but I don't know how they interact with each other. I don't know how the forest is interconnected with each other, which is probably what you know, right? That how this ecology functions together and why we are dying and how can we stop this forest from dying. So I think this interconnectedness between the ecosystem is what the world is. And we are a small part of the world. And at some points in time, we feel that we are the world, but the point is that we are not. So we are part of the whole, and we'll try to see how to maximize our investing experience using the whole forest. Looking at what is the most conducive condition in the forest of how we can last. We spoke about markets, and there was a wonderful chart which showed how you make bad decisions. For example, buying at the top, being greedy and increasing a position when you should actually be cutting down, right? So there is this real point where when a baby giraffe is born, do you know what the mother giraffe does when a newborn baby, she sees a newborn baby? So giraffe is a very tall animal, right? So when the new baby is born, it falls from a height. And the moment the giraffe falls, the baby giraffe, what does the mother do? Do you know? Kicks it. It kicks it very hard. And the baby gasps for air. And then it kicks it again. And the baby stands up on wobbly legs. Okay? And then it kicks it the third time. And then it starts running. And then it licks it and loves the baby because giraffe knows that it's its own child. So those kicks are something which markets delivers to investors, at different points in time. And that is how we become more aware, become more awake, and those kicks will be delivered, whether it is COVID or some other event, those kicks are going to come. The only point is that are we going to know that this is, mother market giving us the kicks, or we are going to abandon it and go away, right? So we will look at some data and see, what is the change happening and why and how to understand it, right? One very important aspect of markets is this tough-looking chart, but I'll try to explain to you what this is. So what all of us believe is that we can cut down risk, right, in our portfolios by staying very long term, right? I want to share one data point with you which is very excellent in terms of how it has come out. So there is this new taxation change which has come that all international FOFs will not have indexation benefits, right? So when you see the data, there has been a drop rate across FOFs. So I'm sure all of us will look at the data. Some SIP cancellations from global funds, people have pulled back some money. So what we did is we looked at our own data. How many investors stay in an international FOF for 3 years or more? You'll be surprised to know they are less than 5%. That means investors have actually never taken indexation benefit, but they just don't know it. And that's the surprising part, that we believe that some changes have occurred and we will change our focus and our strategy to get better results, but more often than not, that best strategy has not really helped us, right? If you look at this chart on your screen, this talks about a very, very important point of what risk is and what isn't. Usually what we see is that if we increase our exposure to some risk, for example, going from fixed income to equity, or from going from equities which are large cap towards small cap, we also feel that our returns will increase, right? So if you increase your risk, theory says that your returns will also increase. But the moot point is that the variability of returns also increases, right? That means the possibility that you will make a loss also goes up significantly, right? As your return increases, the variability of return also increases. And staying invested long term helps you avoid this, okay? So although your variability of return increases by a very large quantum, but if you stay invested for a very long term, it helps you avoid, deep trenches, right? And how does this happen? I think there is a pure statistical case to be made that if you carry a low volatile portfolio over a longer period of time, it will deliver better returns than any other strategy, right? For the simple reason that mathematically you will be investing much larger units because you will have more money, right? Now, let's look at one very important aspect of how this happens in real life. And as you know, the most often quoted example these days is COVID because it is most recent. Prior to COVID, it was global financial crisis, right? So I was sitting live trading during the global financial crisis. And one thing unique about these events is that they keep on occurring again and again. And all of us always fail to know that they will occur, right? We have no idea whether they will occur or not, and there is no way to know it also. But there is a certainty that they will happen, right? If you look at this strip on the screen, what does it say is something very, very important, that the absence of evidence is different from evidence of absence. What does this mean? If you are not able to find risk in a strategy, that does not mean that there is no risk, right? It is just that you did not find it. And that is, I think, the base reason why it is very, very important to look at the world and know that what kind of events, what kind of extraordinary events can give you the possibility of a smoother investment journey. For example, Amit spoke brilliantly about that 4s and 6s, which SIP will hit a 4 and a 6. Is there a way to know that, right? I'm sure that it's very difficult to know, but I think there are certain signs that you can look at that will allow you to make a guesstimate that there is a possibility that you are going to make these 4s and 6s in your SIPs. So let's look at some hard data. And because I'm going to talk about some bit of markets, I will probably run fast and explain to you what's happening in India today. And we'll look at some data points and see what is the change. So what we are seeing right now is steady progress. Of course, this is a picture of a satellite being launched, and I think which is a big change that we've done. We've launched satellites at 99% lesser cost than NASA over time, right? Let's look at what changes have occurred here. So one of the biggest change that we've seen is a very large focus on infrastructure in India, right? You have seen, this is an unbuilt road, by the way. There is no such road right now. This is planned for the Ganga Expressway, which will be built. But what's amazing is that in India, what has happened is that over the last 9 years, we have spent about $7 trillion in investments in India. How much? 7 trillion. That is 50% of all the money that we spent over the last 75 years. So since independence to now, we have spent about $14 trillion in building roads, railways, ports, and houses, right? Out of that, 7 trillion has been spent in just the last 9 years. And we are going to spend another 7 trillion in the next 6 years. Okay? Why these numbers are important? So there are only 4 countries in the world who spend more than $1 trillion a year on infrastructure. Number 1, China at $12.5 trillion. Then there is United States, which spends about $5.5 trillion every year. And then there is Japan at $1.2 trillion. And number 4th was Germany. Now we have overtaken Germany, and now we are spending $1 trillion. So, which is a very, very sizable and large number. $1 trillion kitna hota hai? 80 lakh crores per annum, based on what's going on right now. And where does this money go? It is spent a lot on a number of things, primarily towards real estate creation, houses. But one big change which has occurred in India is this road construction activity. So if you look at these yellow bars in between, it starts with FY80. So in 1980s, we had about 29,000 kilometers of national highways, kilometers. Okay? In 23 years, it doubled to 58,000 kilometers of national highway. Okay? And if you go back to 2000, this is about 50,000 kilometers. From 2000 to 2016, it became 1 lakh kilometers. So we doubled in 23 years, then we doubled in 16 years. You can see from 2000 to 2016, right? And then from 2016, in 9 years, we are again going to double at 2 lakh kilometers. So 2 lakh kilometers of national highway will be the second largest road network in the world. And why is it important now? Because if you go back to 2018, when you had maybe 1.2 lakh kilometers of highway, you did not have a better tax structure. So right now, you have GST, because of which you don't have octroi. Your truck speed has increased from 25 kilometers per hour to 35 kilometers per hour. So there is a big, large saving with the same infrastructure that we have today, which is going to create a big positive impact on the economy. And I think this impact is yet to happen. For example, one very simple way to quantify it is, in India, there is no concept of a day car. People have 1 or 2 cars, or everybody in the family has a car in urban, rich areas. But in most other societies, what they do is they keep a car to drive every day, and they keep a luxury car for the weekend, right? And which increases auto sales multifold. In India, because nobody could drive, because there were no roads to go from city A to city B, nobody has thought about these changes to happen. And we feel that over the next 15 years, 20 years, many of these changes will come up, right? And infrastructure plays a very large part of it. Primarily, our numbers are rising at a very steady pace, and now they are becoming meaningfully large, right? Another important trend of why this is occurring is that our corporate India has come back at a very fast pace. So if you look at this chart on your screen, this is BSE 500 companies. They were sitting on a net debt of 12 lakh crores. So when COVID happened, March 2020, BSE 500 companies were sitting on a net debt of 12 lakh crores, 12 trillion rupees. Now they are sitting on a net debt of 8 lakh crores. So they have paid their debt. Their balance sheets are much more cleaner, right? It's the health of the BSE 500 universe is much more robust now. How does this help? One big change, I think this is possibly one of the largest changes that as an investor, if we miss it, we might miss the India story altogether, right? And what is the change? This is possibly the least tight or least restrictive monetary tightening cycle that we've seen. So in most cycles, what RBI does is it raises interest rates, right? If there is inflation or there is a global threat, it will raise interest rates. If you look at this black line, this time what has happened, our peak rates have been lower than all our past peaks, right? If you go back to the IL&FS crisis, we peaked at 8% or so. If you go back to 13, 8.9, prior to that rates were even higher, right? In this cycle, the peak rates have been much lower. Secondly, our interbank liquidity deficits have been absent, which is the first time outside of a crisis that has happened. I think last time it happened was during Y.V. Reddy's time, which is 15 years ago. All the other liquidity surpluses that you see in India are the construct of either a crisis, like global financial crisis, or demonetization, which is artificial, right? So this is the first time, and what does it do? I think it creates a huge positive kicker for India's finances, right? So for banks, the non-performing loans are at 20-year low. Credit growth for the first time is now above pre-GFC levels. So from GFC to now, there is an average growth rate of credit, banking credit of just 9%. Today, we are sitting at 15%, right? So if you put all the three numbers together, one, very large infrastructure spending. Number two, healthy corporate balance sheets. Number three, the ability of the financial sector to lend at lower interest rates. And if you put all these four together, what does it help you with? So we try to, quantify the impact of how this will help. So one simple impact is every 100 basis points reduction in borrowing cost causes our growth rates to accelerate by 80 basis points. So if you were growing at 5% and interest rates fall by 100 basis points, you will grow at 5.8%, right? So this impact, I think, is going to be much larger, possibly be felt over the next 5 years, and it's not a short-term 1-year impact. Another key aspect is how India is much more stronger internationally. Our external position is much more stronger. And one simple reason is that our exports numbers have started to improve, particularly on the services side. We still don't manufacture a lot, and we still struggle with it, but our services sector has picked up quite a bit. And the only problem point is that nobody knows why. We have tried to find out the data, but it's hard to get the real data, right? But on an aggregate level, if you just go back in time, many of you will remember in 2013, when oil went to $100, India faced huge amount of troubles, right? Portfolio saw deep cuts. This time when oil went to 100, we also faced problems, but not as harsh as they were the last time. And the reason is that there are many balancing factors, particularly our services exports, right? So this again is an area where probably India stands differentiated from other countries. Now let's look at some opportunities and where the valuations stand today. So if you do a comparison between India and all other peer set, this black line represents India's valuation versus our own peer set, like China or Brazil or other emerging markets, right? So if you look at this black line, in October 22, we were trading at a lifetime premium, or 90% premium to all emerging markets, which is the highest premium. I think we did not touch this number even in 2008. So we became a little expensive in comparison to other emerging markets. Since then, what we've done is we have corrected. Our valuations have come back. Earnings have gone up. Indian markets have become a little more healthier than all other markets, right? In comparison to many other international markets, India stands a better chance to receive a lot more FI flows now, okay? One simple fact is, if you take all indices in the world, for example, the biggest example always given is China. So if you look at last 25 years, China's earnings growth has been just 2.5% of the index. And India's earnings growth has been 8.5%, both in dollar terms, right? And that is the reason India has a 600 basis point alpha over China. And I think that is what is going to repeat over time and attract a lot more FI flows. So which possibly are just well for the country. Second thing is that one sector which stands out for India is banking, which I showcased you in data. Our starting valuations right now, not just in India, but globally are one of the lowest, right? So if you look at all the past crises, whenever they have occurred, right now we had this US banking crisis. This time, banks are not trading at expensive valuation, which gives you a lot of comfort, because if you have a 100 rupee equity portfolio in India, most likely 35 to 40 rupees is in BFSI, whichever investment you hold, because that is one of the largest sectors in India, right? So one of the biggest drivers of Indian market, a very large market cap, very large profit pool, has much more comfortable valuations than it has been for a very long time, right? Healthcare, again, we track about 100 companies. 2/3 of the universe, 66% of that universe is trading at discount to their long-term valuation, right? It's been a sector which has been under correction for about 2 years now. COVID had a very large rally, but since 2015, the sector hasn't done much, except the COVID year, right? And what we are seeing now is that the sector, I think Mr. Iyengar pointed out, is now seeing outflows, which is very, very typical, although the stocks are extremely cheap in this sector. So this, again, I think is a area of opportunity which will not present itself again and again. An opportunity where margin of safety is very, very high. And third and last one is capital goods and infrastructure, where we see that valuations again are very attractive. And I showed you in the first 3 slides that the room for this sector to do well is very, very large. So to conclude, I think 2 very critical things. A, once we know the hard numbers on how the economy and the markets are functioning, it will probably give us more confidence on whether to stay with our investments or not, right? And I think it certainly does appear that over the next 10 years or 5 years, it makes a lot more sense to stay invested, right? And second and more important point, all the areas where opportunities are abundant, I think we should be more agile and anticipate better opportunities in these areas. So with this, I will close here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sahil Kapoor, on those interesting parallels between the natural ecosystem, data, as well as investing. I'd actually like to call upon Mr. Yuvraj, Mr. Tulsi Raman, and Mr. Prajot to honor Mr. Sahil Kapoor. As Mr. Iyengar pointed out earlier, that there seems to be no bar with respect to who is entitled to make good investments. With that being said, I'm very delighted to introduce a very young, talented, budding artist, Miss Sasha Young. Miss Sasha is supposedly the only teenage client, which makes her the youngest client who has started investing in mutual funds through the sale of her paintings. She's been winning many accolades since the age of 11. And at the age of 13, she won a trip to South Korea in the prestigious Inco painting competition, and also won a third place for the second leg of the competition held in Busan, South Korea. And recently, for the Camel Art Contest, in the entire South Indian region, she won first place, and she awaits results for the All India competition. The Camel Art Contest holds the Guinness Book of World Records for being the largest art competition in the world. She's just finished 12th standard, and she intends to study visual arts at Stella Maris College. I'm very happy to introduce Sasha along with a video of her beautiful paintings. I request Ms. Sasha's parents to also join her on stage.
Okay, so you have a glaring example of how the My World works. You saw those beautiful paintings. So the extension of brain and mind into my world and the world, and now we are coming to the session where actually these two intersects. And I reminded of a very interesting story again. So in one of the speeches, Buddha talks about a whip and a horse. And he says that how these two are interrelated. So assume the horse to be the my world and whip to be the world. And he says that there are four kinds of horses. The first horse actually starts running when you say the word whip. He doesn't see the whip, he just hears the word whip and he starts running. The second horse doesn't run at the sound of whip, but when he actually sees the whip, he starts running. The third horse, he doesn't run even when he sees the whip. He has to be whipped to actually run. And once you whip him once, he starts running. And the fourth horse, he has to be whipped again and again to run. And he said that most of the people in the world are category 4. Okay, has to be whipped again and again to run. And that is the importance of the world and my world, that you have to use it again and again to make sure that you improve on your performance. So we talked about very interesting formula. I think Raghav said Albert Einstein's quote. Sahil showed the compound interest formula. So there's a person who knows the compound interest formula mathematically, how it works, and one person knows how to use it. It's like saying that one person knows the formula of water and knows the freezing and the boiling point, and other person knows the use of water, when to use it and how to use it, right? Now the next speaker is going to tell you, because he knows both, he's going to tell you about what is in the compound interest formula and how to use it. So it's a marriage of both, like what you should know and how you should use. And I'm very happy to invite Vishal Kapoor, CEO Bandhan AMC, to talk about it in detail. Thank you so much, Vishal, for coming down. Stage is yours.
Thank you, Amit. Am I audible at the back? Audible now? Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. And I must say that this is a very unenviable task, because I know I'm sitting between people who came exactly on time and people who deserve their dinner exactly on time as well. So sorry about that. But I also have a very unenviable task of following up on two great presenters. Raghav, my friend, who did a brilliant job of taking us through my world and all of what goes on between the heart and the mind, and Sahil's excellent thoughts about where the opportunity is. So I will try and keep it quick. I'll also try and hopefully do some bit of, I can't say justice to what Amit has asked me to do, to try and see how we can, what do we really do after all of this. But like they say, no harm in trying. That's the best we can do. So we'll touch upon the world first, which is where's the opportunity, and also to some extent where's the dilemma then. If the opportunity is so clear, then why do we struggle? We'll also talk about my world, or your world, sorry, which is your world. Yes, we heard about biases, we heard about instinct, we heard about the fact that the mind and heart can be different, etc. But what do you do? Who can you trust in that sense? And maybe then go back to some time-tested principles. What has worked for people? So if that's okay, I'd also like to invite your participation, because it'll be fun if we can interact, if you can tell me what you think, in a sense. Yeah. So I think the Sahil's charts, I will try and summarize to say, look, we know there are a lot of opportunities, right? I think we all know that. I think as an investor, as people who consume news, you know that there's a lot going on. So what's the problem? The problem is that how do you choose what, when, how much, right? So it's not that simple, is the point. We also know that there is risk and return. Sahil had a great slide telling us about, as return goes up, risk goes up, variability of return goes up, etc. There are certain products, I think you would know, we generally fall into a linear sort of a graph. This is our attempt to simplify things. But the fact is, life is not that simple. How do you optimize? So this is known. Okay, great. But what do you do with it? So that's still a challenge. We also know that economies go through cycles. We saw some of the graphs which go up and then come down, and they go up again and they come down, etc. The issue is that some of these cycles are working differently at the same point in time. So something's going up, something's coming down. Interest rates are going up, equity markets are coming down, as an example. Those are things that are happening all the time. So the point again is that while it is important to know all of this, it's still a tough job to try and optimize this. So it is difficult to predict where the next cycle is. If it were that easy, everyone would be very rich, but it's not the case, unfortunately, at least for me. Let's look at your world, my world, right? So yes, we know that there are biases. We know that the mind can behave in certain ways that we don't want it to behave in. But then what? And that's the question. So as an example, we can identify our goals today, right? All of us can identify goals. I want to get rich, but I also want to be retiring in general with a reasonable sum of money. Someone wants to be financially free. Someone wants to plan for a holiday. We can identify all of that. But there is still a challenge. Our goals change. When I started, I didn't have this goal. Sasha's goals are different from her dad, right? So life will change. So goals change. So had you started at a certain time and you had a certain goal, it may have changed during the course. So that's a challenge. We have to be, and why are we saying this? Because if it were that easy, it would be, great, but it's not. So we have to look at the second order and go deeper, and that's what we're trying to do. We know that our emotions drive behavior. I think, there's some great, context that Raghav shared about how emotions basically drive your action. The goalkeeper where, the chance is that a third of the times the ball will come straight, but yet with so many people wanting you to do something, you can't just stand there. That's why 6% of the time you'll stand there, most of the time you'll jump, because although that's not statistically what you should do, that's what you end up doing. So action bias is real. Let's look at this example for instance. I have a fund, last 1 year the returns were over 20%. I'm happy. What do? I invest more. I have a fund, last 1 year returns 10 to 20%. Okay, what do? Information still green. You invest, maybe stay put at least. Yeah. Oh my God, 0 to 10%, single digit return now in this fund, last 1 year. What do? Maybe reevaluate, watch it, call the MFD, samjhao, why did this happen? Negative return, what do? Exit, doesn't work, get out, right? Is that the best outcome is the question. Did we do the right thing in taking this action? Okay. This is actual data. This is not an illustration. For the first one that we invested more, the next 5 years, the CAGR was 9.9%, 10% CAGR, not bad. Right? But for the second one, where we stayed put, the CAGR over the next 5 years was 11.7%. Third one, we reevaluated, right? We said not really good. Next 5 year CAGR, almost 15%. 15% compounded over 5 years. And the last one where we redeemed, 17.5% return compounded over the next 5 years. Did we take the right decision? We had the data. We allowed the data to impact our action, which is what is very normal. But was the action the right thing to have done? And clearly the answer is no. Yeah. The fact is, and I think there was a chart talking about this, that because of data and we getting bombarded by that all the time, it plays games. It allows the mind to behave and think in a certain manner. So when markets, and there's of course a lag because we take time to absorb it, right? So the markets are going up, it has hit a peak. From optimism, it goes to exuberance, and then after that it is falling. We're saying, no, it will come back. There's a bit of denial. Didn't we face that in the COVID crash? No, it will come back. It's not going up, etc., etc. It reaches a trough. There's fear, anxiety, panic, all of this. So this is a cycle that goes on with a lag. Yeah, and there's a lag. Does this happen in real life, or this is all fiction? This is all theory. Yeah? This is actual data of where and this is not too far away, so some of this may be relevant in that sense. 16, 17, you'll see a little trough over there, and you'll see with a lag. This is SIP flows coming down, or net flows in India mutual funds. Sorry, this is coming down. Again, over there, a bit of a crash. 3 months later, 4 months later, reduction in the net sales. That one is the COVID crash, right? The big crash. Next 4-5 months, reduction in the total amount of mutual fund sales, net sales this is, right? So what is the client doing? Saying, oh my God, past returns are bad, let me pull out money. What we saw in the table just now. Last 1 year returns are bad, let me pull out money. Guess what the market was doing at the same time? Yeah, it's happened recently again. Some amount of correction, some amount of turbulence right now, macro challenges, and there you go. Net flows are going down. So what we just shared as the green and the red faces is not theory, this is happening. Is that the right decision we're making? We just saw. No, not really. And that's the reason for us to step back a bit and go back to some bit of the basics that we should talk about. So what are some of these time-tested principles, as I call it? And while we can sit for a much longer discussion, but I just want to narrow down to 4 or 5 that I think I would like to use, and I've learned from a lot of successful investors, and I think they definitely use. So that's what I want to talk about quickly. Firstly, I've made a house. I have a beautiful French window in there. Huge piece of glass, gives me a fantastic view outside. Yeah? Great. The challenge is that the kids playing outside as well. Right? And there's the risk that one of these kids are going to play cricket and this is going to come and hit my window. What do I do? What would you do? You know, the window crashes, I'm exposed to the elements, Chennai heat right now, and the dust and everything else. I don't want to be exposed to the elements. What can you do? One way to do this is cut this out and, cut this out into little, panes, so that if one of them break, I don't have as much of a loss, I don't have as much of an expense, and the protection I get is at least reasonable in that sense, right? That's what we would call asset allocation, which is just spread your risk a bit. But the issue also is that in that asset allocation, and this is something that you may have seen, but in case you haven't, this is just how the 5 or 6 top asset classes have performed over different calendar years. Right? What this is also telling you is that in no particular order is one asset class going to outperform all the time. Right? So you have gold, Nifty small cap, sometimes S&P in the top 2 or 3, etc., and they keep bouncing around. Yeah. So the principle is that to protect yourself from this window getting broken, split it up into smaller cubes, which is allocation. That will help you smoothen the ride, so the bumps are not as much. So clearly, I think the basic principle, equities give you growth, but will give you a bumpier ride because there's more volatility there. It's a very simple way to look at it. Debt, much smoother ride, but may not be as attractive in terms of growth. You'll get there. It won't be as exciting. An asset allocation portfolio, you can mix and match, get the level of bumpiness or growth that you want. Can be customized to you. Right? There was a very famous study done. It won a Nobel Prize in the 70s, way back, yeah, which basically said that among the various things that we look at as investors of what impacts my portfolio return, 90+% of that influence is contributed by only one factor, which is asset allocation. So how much money you will make is actually more dependent on what your allocation was than which product you chose, which fund manager you chose, what the charges were, what your timing was, etc. All of that put together is less than 10%. Question to you, how much time do you spend thinking about your allocation? Of the little time that you give your portfolio, do you really think about asset? It has 90% weightage in the importance in your portfolio, but how much time do you spend? And in most cases, the answer I get is less than 10%, because most of the time we are actually worried about which stock, which scheme, which portfolio, which manager, Doesn't matter. Frankly, this is what really matters, is what a Nobel-winning study is telling us. So, maybe time to spend more time on asset allocation, which is how is your portfolio constructed, rather than all of these other things which we can get distracted by largely. The second, product selection, is it important? Yeah? Should we hold on forever? Isn't there a risk that it may be the dog, which is, it hasn't done well, it continues to underperform? Or should we keep changing it and then run the risk that, oh, actually what I got out of became the star for the next cycle or the next 5 years? What should we do? Yeah. Is it important? Yeah, can be. Keep in mind that as markets, or with market volatility, the difference in performance within the same asset class can be quite exaggerated as well. So even in a same category of, let's say, flexi cap funds, the difference in performance can be significant. So it's not a small, let's say, discussion. It's not like you're looking at 1 or 2%. It can be 10, 12%, or even more. One way that people look at it is that there is a liquidity, bucket that you should have, which is emergency money. Keep that aside. But a lot of investors think about it as core and satellite, saying, this is my core portfolio, which is long term, etc., etc. There's a satellite bucket, which is more tactical, where I'm looking at more immediate opportunities, something which is more fun, more active, etc. So that's just one way that people that have tried to figure out what to do. Of course, what is important is that you have to review it periodically, because core may not remain core, things change. Satellite may not remain as attractive through cycles. There are a lot of people who in the 90s used to say, all I want to do is buy these blue chips and sit tight on it. Unfortunately, blue chips have done well, but they've changed. Only 5 or 6 of those 30 stocks now remain, right? 27, 25 have just gone away. So things change, recognize that. So you can't be completely passive, you can't be too active. You have to find the right mix for you to review periodically. We discovered the secret formula through Raghav, which is, it's not about the R, it is not about the principle, it is about time. So when you think about compounding, time, which is the exponential, is the most important. It's very difficult for us to comprehend or imagine in a compounded manner. Our brain just thinks linearly. And there are enough examples, I'm sure you would have come across, where if we were to ask you, how much would this be compounded, you will get it wrong, I will get it wrong, all of us will get it wrong. It's just difficult for us to imagine how compounding works, how quickly things can move, right? So, we can't imagine that. What should we do? Use it to your advantage, which is use T, time, in the market. It is the single biggest factor between Grace making money and the Merrill Lynch chap, I forget his name, Richard, messing it up despite all his knowledge. Right? Why did Grace make money? She was disciplined, but more importantly, she was in the market for 40 years. So use time to your advantage. Very happy to see Sasha has already started. Great job. Fabulous. I can guarantee you are a millionaire before you imagine it. How should we think about fund performance? Easy stuff, right? What's the big deal? 12% good performance? Yeah. Here's a fund, 1 year return. Again, this is actual data, not fiction, not illustration. It has a return of 3.5%. How would we rate it? There's no trick in this, boss, so please don't worry. Good? Okay? Bad? What do you think? Bad? Very bad? Should I have another one? Kick this guy out. Yeah? Very poor? Yeah? The benchmark for this fund was 2.8. Now what do you think? Yeah? Now if you are thinking the world, it is good. Yeah, because it beat the benchmark. If you're thinking my world, I got 3.5%. I didn't expect that out of this fund. I expected more. Yeah? So what is it? Good, bad, ugly? What's the consensus? Okay? We have a confused audience. Anyone wants to try? What do you think? Would you pardon this fund manager? Well, the fund manager is going to tell me, look, I beat the market. That's what you pay me for. Right? And poor MFD will say, look, the customer, you will say that, look, I got 3.5% return. Why are you so happy? Yeah? This is real. Like I said, this is real data. Yeah? What do we do with this? And what are we missing? What we are missing is that this same fund, if you had done an SIP, the 1-year SIP return on this fund was 15.9%. Yeah. And the benchmark 1 year would have been 11.8%. It still beat the benchmark. But did any of us think that, look, actually, why are we looking at 0.2, 0.1 year return? When in most cases, everyone keeps telling you, boss, buy systematically, join the fund industry in equity through a systematic investment plan. And because this is real data, you can imagine how much of a difference just that systematic investment can do. What is it called? Rupee cost averaging, as an example. Have you heard of that? Right? It's also how you can benefit from volatility. So now would we say that this is good performance? You made 15.9%. Yeah? You happy? Yes? Okay, great. So this is one thing that we should learn to do, which is the markets are volatile. That is a given. You can't do anything about it. How you use the volatility to your advantage is in your hands. And the very simple mathematical formula before, so SIPs do a lot of things. One of them is discipline. It's very convenient. It just makes sure it happens without you bothering, etc., etc. But the very powerful thing it does is it makes volatility work to your advantage, like you have probably not realized, like we did just now. We look at point-to-point returns and say, oh my God, 3.5%. But actually, your fund delivered close to 16% return because you benefited from volatility. This is what happened in this case. The markets were volatile. This is again, like I said, good, real data. The NAV was going up and down, but when NAV was down, you were buying a lot more units. And because of that, you ended up with a far better performance than you yourself may have realized. Yeah? So use market volatility to your advantage is one thing you should be looking at, and SIPs, STPs, SWPs, etc. are a great, very convenient way to do it. Yeah. It comes free. So please use it. We touched upon this, but everyone know this lady? Anyone? Serena Williams? Anyone know this person? Can't be his dad, her dad, King Richard. There's a beautiful movie on the dad. Who's Patrick? The coach. Serena still thinks that she is who she is because of several reasons. The biggest reason is her coach. Yeah. Sports we've all heard, right? Sachin talking about Mr. Achrekar, etc., etc., right? Does this happen in investments? Anyone know this? This gentleman? Warren Buffett? Yeah? Best investor of all times? Among others? Who's this chap? Ben Graham? Warren Buffett says, you need an advisor. He had one, Ben Graham. So with all humility, we have to think about it. If the best tennis player of all times needs a coach, the best investor of all time is acknowledging publicly that I could not have done this alone, I need a coach. Who's your coach? Can you really do it alone, given what we've just seen? The reality is that it's not an easy process. I think we have to understand it's not that simple. While there are some simple principles we've just gone through, it can be complex because the process takes you through setting a goal which can change, estimating your future needs which again are changing. How the hell do I know? Determining your condition. Again, it is changing. There's a step missing over here called determining your risk profile. There's a beautiful study which says that your risk profile also changes. A beautiful study which said that when I made money at the top of a bull cycle, everyone is very aggressive. If I do a risk profiling, everyone will come out, I am very aggressive. If I do the same study 6 months later when the market is in a bear phase, everyone is very conservative. How can you rely on your risk profile that you are doing yourself? It's just a questionnaire you're answering. Or you think you are aggressive or you think you're conservative, but that's changing. So all of these things can change. So point is, this is an ongoing process. This is not static. And that's often a mistake we make. We think it's static. It's not. Everything is changing all the time. It's a lot of hard work. It's almost a full-time job. Now, do you have a full-time job? Yeah, all of us have some other job. Do we really think we can do all of this on our own? Yeah. Which is where, if all of this is available, there is great opportunity, clearly. You know that your mind will play tricks. There will be biases. And there are some very simple time-tested techniques to jump through this hoop. But you still need someone who will help you do it, which is where a coach is very important. So I'd like to summarize by first just reminding ourselves that yes, there are a world of opportunities in the market, so please don't be scared. That's the last thing you want to do. Be scared of the opportunities, get these mathematicians and chartists scare us. That's not the idea, right? They're throwing information, let's see what we can absorb, what you can't, it's fine. Your world, my world, our emotional being matters the most because it's for us, but the fact is it's behavioral biases which can really get in the way. And therefore, and I'm not saying this is the mantra or anything like that, but if you were to go back with 3 or 4 things you promise yourself that I will do from tomorrow, I would say keep at least some of these handy. Firstly, step back and first identify what your goals are, what your needs are, what your risk appetite is. Often we don't take this first step. We said, "Acha, chalo, save karte hain, we'll invest it." For what, why, how, etc. Really, I don't know. It's better than not doing anything at all. Please start. But it's better if you can just take a step back and assess some of these things. Second, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't have one window pane. Split it up. You don't know, no one knows what is going to go wrong next. So the only way out of this is free insurance, is to diversify. Yeah. Review and rebalance. There is no one buy and hold in reality because things change. People who said, "Oh, I'm going to buy the blue chip in 1990," are probably like, I think one of our friends said, I think Garagav said, 1990 I bought these stocks. This is now paper lying in my cupboard. Happens. In those days, I'm sure we would have done a research and said, "Great stock." Right? Things change. Yeah. Please use the power of compounding, which is simply put, just get in as quickly as possible. I think we have great inspiration here. A lady who's in class 12 who's started investing. Please, let's use this and spread the word. If you've done it, great, but please tell more young people that start investing. This is the single biggest gift you can give the person. 40 years of compounding and 20 years of compounding, the amount of difference, I'm telling you, you cannot think about. Do the math and see. Yeah. Use market volatility to your advantage. We think volatility is bad. Make it an ally. And SIPs, STPs are the best way to make it an ally. And last but not the least, you cannot do it alone. I need a coach, I go to a coach. Right. So if you've chosen Symphonia as a coach, great first stop. I think use them, trust them, work with them. And I think that independent perspective to help you stay on course is the critical difference between eventually success and mediocre performance. Thank you very much.
I would like to invite Mr. Raghav Iyengar, Mr. Sahil, Mr. Vishal Kapoor, Mr. Sundar, and Mr. Amit Basu for a panel discussion.
So while they're making the setup, we'd like to have some questions for you. We just thought it is important for you to participate. So you saw the compounding interest formula, right? And there are a lot of emphasis on that compounding thing. Now I have a question for you. In the compound interest formula, there are three things. There is a principal, there is a rate of interest, and there is time. You have a choice of doubling one of them. You can either double the principal, you can either double the rate, or you can either double the time that you spend. If I have to ask you that which of them will give you the highest output, the answer is simple, it is time. But I have a question which is slightly difficult. Which is the variable which will come second? Will the doubling of rate will give maximum output, or will doubling of principal give you maximum output? What do you think? Any one of you? If you have to maximize output, obviously if you double the time, the output is maximum. But after time, what will come? Doubling the principal will maximize, or doubling the rate will maximize? Rate? How many of you say rate? 1, 2, 3. How many of you say principal? Okay, few more hands, and rest are not decided. So the first question, anyone from the panel can take. So the second spot is taken up by the principal. If you double the principal, you get higher output than if you double the rate. And still we don't use that logic while doing allocation. We still know that in India, most of the allocation happens in bank deposit, gold and real estate, and not in financial asset. Do you think the trend is changing? This question to Vishal probably, and you can give some light on this.
Oh, definitely. I think that's one of the very big positives we are seeing. I think thanks to a lot of awareness as well as general, I think, understanding of how things have worked. Broadly put, if I remember my numbers, about 20 years back, just about a third of our savings was going into financial assets, which means 2/3 was going into physical assets, largely real estate and gold. I think we all know that we are the biggest consumer of gold across the world by a margin. It costs the economy a lot of money, unfortunately, because this is largely imported. So it's not great for the economy, but we just are a very, very gold-hungry country, economy, society, for good reasons, bad reasons, whatever. But we were really up there. We still are. But the trend change we've seen is that now over 50% of our savings is going into financial assets, and that's a big change. As a society, as a culture, to move that amount into financial assets is fabulous. I'm most encouraged to see the younger generation really take this up very well. So I think a combination of awareness, work that has happened, the media, good products being available, access, etc., has certainly turned the tide. Today, as an economy, we are not saving as much. Saving rates has come down a bit. But what we are doing with that saving is far better than what we were doing 20 years back, because we are putting more of it in financial assets and more of that in capital market related assets, where compounding really helps you much more. So that's a great trend. And based on this, we do think that that has huge economic benefits for all of us, because keep in mind, this is capital for our growth as a country. It's not relatively less productive assets which are just sitting there. And it's being done in a more organized manner, more regulated manner. So it's a win-win for the economy, for the saver, for the economy as a whole.
Thank you. So the trend is obviously changing, and it is for us to see whether we are in line with the trend. Second question I think I have for Sahil. And Sahil, the future is something which is not known. It is not written somewhere that you can read the future. And the data is all historical, okay, which is basically a lag indicator. and we are trying to see the future through the lens of data, what are the chances that we'll go wrong on this?
So I think the chances are absolute that we will be wrong most of the time. The idea is how wrong we are and how far we protect ourselves. I think that is the most important aspect. So cutting down on losses and having a larger margin of safety is something which is in our control. And I think everything else is a subset of what will happen in the future. More often than not, we use this phrase, nobody knows. We've been using it in all our products. And I think that is truly the case. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. And there is no way to know also. The only thing that we know today is, depending on what we have today, all the data and access to information that we have, how can I minimize my risk and increase my margin of safety? If I can do that and sit over a longer period of time, I think that is what will create the best outcome. And I think I'm reminded of this Charlie Munger quote, where he says that there is a lot of advantage that we have created over time by not just doing anything stupid and not trying to be very intelligent. I think it is about that only, minimizing your errors.
So,
absolutely, it will be. So I think without past data, we'll be shooting in the dark. So you could say that data is the guiding light, a guide force. But as Amit asked, it still can't tell you the future. It can guide you, help you, and I think that is the role of data. Thanks.
So maybe picking winners and obviously avoiding losers. That's the role the data has. One question to Raghav, and Raghav, when we talk about future and saving for future and retirement, so there's a person who is currently very unhappy, which is yourself, because you're saving and cutting down on your expenditure, without understanding that you are the only person after 20 years you will be happier. So there's a future self which becomes happy when you save, but the current self becomes really anxious. And when you spend, the current self becomes very happy, but you don't realize that your future self is actually becoming very anxious. So how do you break this paradigm? What do you do on this?
It's a very tough question, yeah. I wish I knew the answer, because then I possibly won't be on your side of the table, Amit. But I typically have a sort of a 30, 40, 40. I think what we try and do in investments or investing is that we get extreme. Right? I think at some point of time, and I'm so happy, Sasha, that you started at 18. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep taking your examples. Somewhere I need to take a selfie with you because you're my celebrity for the evening. Right? And I have a daughter who's 18 who's completely the other side. So she's the other side of what Amit said. So she's spending money faster than I earn it. But that's okay. That's her job. I think try and obviously don't go from feast to famine, right? I think there are points of time where suddenly at the age of 45 you realize, oops, I have not saved any money, and then you cut completely everything off. And then at the age of maybe 20, 25, when you start earning, you say that, hey, I have a lot of time so I will just keep spending. So the 25 self or the 30 self or the 35 self is a spender. Not all the stuff that we see, iPhones and stuff. Cost of living generally in life has gone up. When your life becomes more complicated, when you get married, get kids, your needs get up. So you tend to spend much more. I think you have to have a certain plan when you start earning. And then if you can have 40-30-30 rule, if that works. And why I'm saying 40-30-30 is 40% the government will take away, whether we like it or not, right? And you'll ask me, how is 40%? Income tax is not 40, but there's an element of GST also which is there, which we all pay for without realizing it, right? And 30% is hopefully what you should try and save. It'll be a great investment. And about 30% if you can get to save, to spend. So don't completely choke yourself off, because ultimately spending is what gives you that immediate rush and makes you want to earn more. So don't become a monk at the age of 30 and say that I have attained nirvana and I won't do anything at all. So you need to have a little bit of balance. If you get that balance right at a very young age, unfortunately I didn't do that, which is why I'm not anywhere going to be close to your net worth when I'm 50, right? Or when you're 50, I would love to meet you. Hopefully I'll be around. I'd love to hear net worth at that time. I'm sure it'll be many times mine. But if you can get that going, yes. But please don't cut yourself off. I think we have this issue around us that saving is seen to be like a like a diet, right? I think it's like, oh God, why am I saving? And let's not make it a punishment, Amit. That's all I'm saying, basically.
So one question to you. So most of us take decision based on opinions because finding data is very difficult. So it could be anything, whether buying something. So I don't go on research. I actually ask my friend or somebody and take his opinion and take a decision. Similarly, when it comes to investments also, most of us actually take decision based on opinions. It could be out of the TV or the media, or it could be anything. So most of us get confused to read the data. So if you can tell the investors who are here to look at what kind of data, very few things which are very basic, which is easily available, which can help investors to actually track and not really complicate this one.
So I think there is this simple phrase that if you have opinions, let go with mine, right? And I think that is the most important factor in investing. Most of us take decisions based out of trust, and that trust sometimes is blind because you believe your friend and you feel that he's going to tell you the right thing and you do it. That may not be the right thing to do because the other person may not have access to the right set of data points. But if you ask me what is the only data which matters for investors, eventually somebody has to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work of investing, right? So you cannot have a great investing experience without having a Warren Buffett or a Charlie Munger or a great fund manager. It's not going to happen. Somebody has to do it. Either the fund manager will do it or you will do it. In our case, most of us either don't have the ability or the time or the inclination to do it, and therefore we hire help, right? We hire a money manager, we take support from an MFD, we use a mutual fund vehicle because they will take those decisions. So for us, I think the data that probably Vishal showed, the difference between selling out when the returns are bad, I think if you get that concept, maybe it is enough for you. You don't have to go through across data spectrum and understand each and every point. I think the fund manager will do it for you. That is his job. So for us, most of the data that we see should instill a sense of discipline in us and help us take better decision. I think that is enough. If you want to go one step deeper, you might understand the valuations perspective and know that if there are events like COVID happening or a crisis happening, I need to step up my allocations, which will come only from asset allocation, right? So I think only these two segments, not taking bad decisions, using data, and probably using asset allocation.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So in the presentations, we have seen that behavior is very important. But when it comes to investments, most investors actually start with crunching data, trying to understand finance and many other things. But in part of your presentation, you said behavior is the most important thing because that's what actually differentiates. So the examples what was shown. So as an industry, so maybe this question anyone can answer. As an industry, what are we actually doing to educate investors on the behavior side? So anyone can pick up.
I guess Vishal to do this because I think in the mutual fund space, we got some very smart personalities. So in fact, when we asked a few investors, we do these random surveys across our funds and he said, why did you invest in mutual funds? So somebody said, because Sachin told me. So, so I don't know, for people at the back, it was Sachin Tendulkar, right? So I think that was part of MF Sahi Hai campaign. And you see nothing on that is on product. There's very little on product. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Vishal, you want to elaborate on that. Maybe that's what we're trying to tell people.
Yeah, that's right. I think, so one, there is a lot of education slash, general awareness that the industries try to do. The mutual fund Sahi Hai campaign is one of them. I think it's done very well. Is the feedback we get as an industry body. It has become a buzzword. SIP as a tool. See, end of the day, it's a process. It's not a product. But I think all of us have heard enough instances where we say, do you invest in mutual funds? Saying, no, I invest in SIPs. So, there are enough people who think that SIP is the product, it's not mutual fund underlying. So that itself has become, I think that's just a telltale sign of how that has become a popular end product almost in customers' minds. I think the media has done a fabulous job. But most importantly, I think the combination or the partnership between fund houses, between some of the tools, some of the techniques, some of the training, some of the videos, etc., that we've been able to share, along with our partners, MFDs, distributors, advisors, etc., in trying to take it out to the end customer. I think that's worked very well. At a fund house, for example, we'd made a movie many years back called One Idiot. If any of you would like to, you should try and see it. It's on YouTube. It's very easy. It's 35 minutes. It's not a long one. But one feedback we get consistently is that, and this is coming from our industry peers, I'm told that that is run as a mandatory movie you have to watch when you come to the industry almost. Because you go through the movie and you will start an SIP. Correct. So that's just ways in which I think we are all trying our best.
Thank you, sir.
Just to add one point here. So I think there is a very important change which has to take place over time, and we at our end are trying to do that, which is seek compatible capital, which means we want investors who are aligned with the philosophy of the instrument in which they are investing. So just to give you what does this mean, you know who's the best investor, public market investor of all time on record? Peter Lynch, right? He ran the Medallion Fund for 13 years, 29% CAGR. Nobody has ever been able to do that in a public market fund for such a long period of time at that size. You know who was the manager who succeeded him? So Mr. Winnick took over the fund from Peter Lynch, and for the next 8 years, Mr. Winnick delivered a negative alpha on the index, and he was fired. And what he did is changed all the stocks that Peter Lynch had bought. But what really happened is that the strategy which he had deployed made 33% CAGR, higher than Mr. Peter Lynch over the next 12 years. The only problem was that investor redeemed, when returns were below benchmark over time. So the only differentiation was the capital that he had in his fund was not compatible with the strategy that he was running. And to do that, what we are doing is giving out tools to investors through our website, through the way that we communicate, and to clearly demarcate what kind of product should have what kind of investment journey, so that you pick the right fund and you can stay with it. So I think the magic of compounding can only occur if you stay with the fund long enough for it to deliver what it is intended to do. So I think this is the piece which should happen over time, and different investors with their risk appetite seek different sort of instruments.
One question for all three of you, and I think this is a question which we would like an honest answer upon. Assume for a minute that you have removed your hats of financial professionals, and as all of you have said that you need a coach, and you want to hire a coach for your investments and financial needs. What is that one question which you will definitely ask before deciding to your financial coach? Basis that question only you will decide. What is that one question you will ask?
What is your biggest mistake?
This is a question you could ask.
Yep. I'm sure he'll have many mistakes, hopefully lesser than the market, which is what will make him a great coach. It's impossible in today's world to be getting 10 on 10. I mean, this is not a NEET exam or a JEE exam where you go to some coaching class and you see the photos of people at 720 on 720. As you all have heard today, I think it's very dynamic. Your need is different from my need, and 3.5% can become 15% in a click of a button, right? So I think if I would just ask him, what is your biggest mistake? And obviously I need to trust him to give me a big answer. So the first point is trust. Trust him to give the right answer, and then obviously ask the question. Yeah, first.
Will you take responsibility for the advice?
Yep, that's 99.99% sir will say yes. I mean, I'll be very honest, and nobody will say, no, I'm not a responsible guy, I'm sorry.
If there are 10 funds and 3 are not doing well, what do you do?
I think you should ask your coach. I would put more actually. Going by Vishal's example. Assuming nothing has changed. So, I mean, somebody asked us a question, which is the best time to invest? Which is the worst time to invest? So if you want, one of the things that media helps us is that when you have a screamingly negative headline, Economic Times open front page and it says invest index down 5,000 points and the world is ending, maybe a good time to talk to your advisor and check whether it's a good time to invest money, and vice versa. And vice versa. So if there's something which is very optimistic, maybe a good time to check again whether it's a good time to take some money off the table and put it into some other asset class. Right? Should be dynamic.
So I think one question that I would want to understand is that if my coach can help me to not die and just survive, I think that is enough. So if you survive in the market for a very long period of time, you will come out. You will come out with flying colors. It's just, being there in the market and lasting and not having a permanent loss of capital. If your coach can do that for you, and I think he gives you middling returns, and probably he's in the Q3 category of what we say, but you survive every cycle and you are there, your portfolio survives, I think you will probably be in the top 1 or 2% investors over a period of time.
Should we take some questions from the audience?
Okay. So I was trying to escape the question because it's a tough one. No, but I would go with what Raghav's approach would be, which is really, as in to me, I would toss a full toss to the person, which is, ask for an extreme. What was your biggest mistake? What was your best product? What was your worst piece of advice? Something like that. Sometimes the best product is a good way to assess the person, because, an open-ended question where the person comes out and blabbers for 5-10 minutes, I think will tell you a lot about everything you want to know about the person. So that would be my approach. But what you're checking for is first integrity, very important. This is end of the day, this is about advice for you, it is about your life. So integrity is extremely important. To experience, how many mistakes, what is the learning from the mistake, extremely important again. And, generally I would look for some reasonably high amount of humility. People who are so sure about themselves, I would really watch out for, because like Sahil said, nobody knows, so how do you? So I think those are some of the things I would look for.
Thank you.
There are so many new advisors on the block today. How do we decide? Everybody says, I'm the best and I'll do this for you. And one is, should we keep on changing? Because once you're happy with a group of advisors, one normally doesn't change. There's a comfort level, returns are good. But so many people knocking on your door.
So that's why the question was asked with them, that what will you ask? So there are 3 questions to ask, and those questions probably will guide you towards the right advisor.
So sir, by your logic, by your question, if somebody says I'm the best, then I don't think he should be looked at.
Can I ask
So one point is that we, at our end, as let's say managers of money, what we exercise is a very high threshold of inclusivity. If we are going to include something, a stock in our portfolio, or a strategy in our asset allocation, or a new fund manager hiring, or an employee hiring, we have to set a very high threshold of inclusivity. So if you onboard a new financial advisor, you cannot include everybody. For example, one inclusivity criteria could be that he should have a 20-year experience. That will eliminate, I think, most of the new age advisors that you have, because they haven't seen cycles long enough to give you an advice which is long enough. So you can set some, I think, inclusivity thresholds.
One question anybody can take. The future being uncertain, and we have an opportunity to park our money in a bank FD, and we also have a requirement that we beat inflation. Is it possible to predict how much the stock markets will beat the bank FD in the long run? Is it possible to predict from what we have seen in the past?
Yes and no. Yes, because you have data which shows that it has beaten it by a margin. No, because I don't know what the next 5 years is going to be. Hence, you need to have some money in across asset classes. So I think the mistake that we make is we swing on pendulum. So when index is at 60,000, we are like 80% in stocks. When index is at 45,000, we are 100% in bank FDs. Both approaches are wrong. And I'm just giving a generic statement. I think that's where Sundar is best suited to sort of guide all of you, because I'm different, all of you are different. But this is what largely most investors do. So I think you have to have a bit of everything in your portfolio. Obviously, bank FD should be a part of your portfolio. But today, most investors have most money in bank deposits. And it's a lot of lazy money. In fact, it's not even a bank deposit, it's in a bank savings account, right? Which is...
That's not my question.
Okay, sorry.
My question is, how much more the investors can make over and above the bank rate in the long run? I'll tell you a reason why I'm asking this question. Sensex came into existence in 1979. And by 92, the Sensex climbed to 4,000. If you compare the inflation and the bank FD rates around that time, bank FD was giving 14%. And the stock markets also moved up by 40 times. Of course, there was a Harshit Mehta period at that time. Subsequent 25 years, just before the pandemic, the bank rates were down. The gains from the markets were also less than 10%. But in both the circumstances, the markets gave much higher than the bank FD rates. So it proves that the markets give higher than the bank rate. I was just trying to figure out, is it possible for us to predict 3% above the bank rate, 4% above the bank rate, 6% above the bank rate as an indication? I'm not telling that some certainty. It's one of the reasons why the Sensex gave higher was because the bank FD rate was higher, inflation was higher, and it resulted in a revenue growth, and that must have happened.
You're absolutely right. I don't have the intelligence to answer that question. There's one person in this who has that. I'm going to give them the mic. He's seen a lot of markets.
No, I think everything is again coming back to my world. Which bank FD, which time frame, what is the reference point, it all depends upon that. So it's obviously impossible to give a generic answer on this. In the same time period, there may be bank FDs which will be doing better than the portfolio return. In the same time period, there will be portfolio return doing better than the bank FDs. So it's all very, very person, and it's not very general. So generic opinions obviously don't matter. The more we do generalization, more difficult it is for us to survive. 3 jobs for a financial coach, and this is my answer to my question. Number 1, he has to make you aware of the risk of the product or asset class which you are investing in. Number 2, he has to stop you from taking concentration bets or concentration risk. And third, he must ensure that you don't fall into the trap of emotions and do a behavioral mistake. There is no 4th role for a MFD or a financial coach that we have. These are the only 3 roles that he has to play. And if he's playing those 3 roles, he will make sure that you end up on a better side of investing world. More questions from the audience?
Yes, so index funds are, very simple instruments tracking one of the indices. And now we have, so when we start with index fund, most of us think only about, let's say, Nifty. But now we have index funds across asset classes. You have index funds in debt category, which track a debt index. You have in equity. You also have index products which are a little more smarter, called smart beta, tracking an index, but which is made with certain rules, right? I think the simplicity of index fund is that if you don't need to beat the market, you meet the market, right? You make returns what markets are delivering, and the best way and simple way to do it is to invest through an index fund. It offers you a cost advantage because it comes with a lower price. It also offers you an advantage to participate in certain categories of asset classes like large cap, right? So I think they have a very good place in your overall asset allocation mix, given your goals. Once your goals are clear, then possibly you can use them. I think definitely they're here to stay for a very long time, probably because they're very, very simple. Yeah.
So there's one question at the back. So can you pass on the mic?
Yeah, thank you for all of your presentations. That was exactly the questions, two questions. First is about the index investing. So we have as you said, Warren Buffett has already said that most of the index funds has bet the actively managed funds. So there is also a counter narrative in our media saying that India is not such a mature market. So I want your viewpoint on that. That is one thing. And second thing, you said about asset allocation. There are multiple goals, say child education, kids marriage, retirement. So you should, what is the framework? Should we have an asset allocation for each of these things? And as we near the goal, how do we withdraw it, or what is things? I know it's going to be personalized and he's going to be coaching us, but I would like to have your viewpoints on those questions. Thank you.
So I'll answer the second question first and then pass on the first question. So you need water at your home. You need water for your kitchen, you need water for your drinking, you need water for your bathing, and you want to take this water out of wells. Will you have 3 wells for 3 different uses? Or you'll have only 1 well and you pull out 3 buckets from the same well? The answer is same. It all depends upon you. You can have 3 wells, 1 for washroom, 1 for kitchen, 1 for personal drinking. Or you can take out 3 buckets of water from the same well. The amount of water in 1 well should be enough to have 3 requirements fulfilled. The amount of water in 3 wells should be enough to fulfill the requirement. So it all depends upon how much water you have. Wells are not important.
So on index fund, let me clarify one data point. I think there is this SPIVA report, which I think is the one going all over the world, saying that active funds don't beat benchmark. Okay. The problem with that data point is it compares the index returns with active funds. The problem is that you can't achieve index returns. You have to pay a cost for it. So if you take all the indices, all the Nifty index funds, which is index funds and ETFs, and do an average, they have a 46 basis points cost. So if you compound that cost over a 10-year period and then compare the index returns or the ETF returns with that of the benchmark active funds, you will find that half of the active funds have beaten the benchmark over the last 5 years. And 5 years ago, this number was very, very high. And let me point out that the active alpha itself is cyclical. And there again comes the point of nobody knows, right? I think 5 years from now, we'll be sitting and saying that active funds are the best in the world because, see, 3/4 of active funds have beaten the benchmark. I think that data itself is very, very cyclical. It moves with time. So you need to know the right mix. I don't think there is one single answer. It all depends on how you allocate to your large cap using what products. So I don't think you need to be single-minded about either passive or active. I think it's a mix.
So maybe we can take questions offline. I think we are running out of time. Over to MC.
I'd now like to invite Mr. Sundar to render the vote of thanks.
Hello, yeah. So thank you so much for all of you to take your time on a weekday, and series of presentations have been done. Thank you for patiently listening. Hope we added some values and some takeaways for you. Thank you so much for your patient listening, and also all the speakers who have traveled from Bombay, Vishal Kapoor sir, Shahil sir, and Raghav Iyengar sir, for taking out time. And also to all the Symphonia partners who could actually travel and be part of this event. Also thank the MC and also the person who kept the time intact, GK Suresh, for making it. So with that, we will conclude the meeting and invite you all for the dinner and cocktail. Thank you so much. The one announcement, Shasha's painting will be displayed. We are just finding a place to display. Okay, so if anyone wants to buy it, it is for sale. Okay, and I will be happy if somebody buys, because that money is going to be invested in mutual funds. Thank you so much. So please join us for dinner and cocktail.